I'm Commissioner Carolina Mejia, and today I'm having coffee with Thurston County Treasurer Jeff Gadman to talk about property taxes and how they work. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me today, Jeff.
Well, thank you for meeting with me. I think it is really important to try and get the public to understand property taxes, our property tax system, and what actually leads to the number that ends up on their tax statement every year.
Yes, I completely agree with you. This year we received the new assessed value, and I know it got a lot of people talking, and so that's why I wanted to have you here today and to kind of take us through the process. You know, property taxes are such an instrumental part of our local government. It funds a lot of different public agencies, from state to local schools, fire districts, and more. So only about 20 cents of each property tax dollar come to the county. So let's talk a little bit about that. Where do the majority of property taxes go? So
that's a really good question. You know, about 60%, and in a lot of cases, a little over 60% of the property tax is for schools. And that kind of lines up with our state constitution, putting the education of children as the #1 priority for government, state government and local government. You end up with about 10% going to fire districts, about another 10%, and this is just in general, 10% going to the cities, and then you've got all the junior taxing districts, the fire districts, the cemetery districts, and then some of it goes out to special assessment districts too.
Okay, so it's interesting to know, that the majority of taxes go towards school districts. I mean, children are the future, so I guess it's important, right? It's very important. But how are property taxes determined? I mean, does it go the same? The reason it brought up a lot of conversation is people received an assessed value that was much higher than what they expected or what it had been in previous years. And so there was fear that, well, my property taxes are going to skyrocket. Am I even going to be able to afford it? So how are property taxes determined?
That's a really, really good question. The first thing to understand is that property taxes in Washington State are budget driven. So when the assessor comes up with your assessed value every year, they're completely blind to whatever effect it might have on property taxes. Excuse me. Every year in the fall, the taxing districts, like the county right now, is going through the budget process where they are trying to determine what it will cost to operate next year. And so once those budgets are decided, usually around December, those budgets are given to the assessor's office. In the assessor's office, there's a levy specialist that applies within the boundaries of any given tax district, applies that budget to the assessed value within the boundaries of that district to come up with a levy rate. So that's where, if you look at your tax statement or the property tax tool that's on the treasurer's website and the assessor's website, you see the breakdown of how much you're paying to each entity that affects your property. So the assessed value goes up a lot, but assessed values and levy rates are like on the opposite ends of a seesaw. When one goes up, the other goes down. For instance, last year, 2020, property tax levy rate for Thurston County was right around $1.22 per thousand assessed value. Well, we had a pretty good increase in assessed values last year, which always affects the next year's taxes. So this year, that levy rate is down to $1.11.
Well, now that you're talking about levies, let's get into it. We just saw one, for Medic 1 be passed in August. But, what is a tax levy?
So the tax levy is a mechanism that's applied to the total assessed value in a tax district for them to be able to collect revenue to operate, to get a fire truck to your door, smooth out the pothole, provide other services, parks, libraries, and that sort of thing. that people have come to expect and have asked for. Like I said, it's budget driven. And so, if the fire department determines they need $500,000 to operate next year, then that gets applied to the total assessed value within their boundary. It's a division problem. It's a complicated, but to oversimplify it, it's a pretty simple division problem. To come out with that underlying amount per $1,000 of assessed value that you will pay. Your assessed value, the fairness and equity of your assessed value is very important because that is what determines your share of a particular tax district budget.
So leading on to my next question, I live in Olympia's urban growth area, so I'm part of the county. And are property taxes the same kind of all across the board, or are we seeing different taxes for each area?
You're going to see different taxes in different areas because, the overlaying tax districts, for instance, where I live over by the fairgrounds, in the city limits of Lacey, I've got the city of Lacey, I pay County Road, I pay the port, I pay Fire District 3, I pay Medic 1, I pay the library, so, and there's another one in there. So I pay into 7 different tax districts. My levy rate is going to be different, total levy rate that I pay is going to be different from yours because the tax districts that overlay your property are different and their budget needs every year are different.
That's good to know. Well, thank you so much, Jeff, for that information in regards to property taxes. Now, let's move to the special purpose districts and how they impact property taxes. So in Washington state, some property taxes are higher even after accounting for property value differences. And this could be due to a special district, purpose district. So what exactly is a special purpose district?
So without trying to get too far into the weeds here, but I could because I geek out about this stuff. So one thing that has been a very, very strong underlying current in Washington state ever since our Constitution was developed is local control. And so special purpose districts were written into our Constitution so that people could maintain that local control without having larger government imposing things on a wider scale. So for instance, a lake management district. Very near my house is the Hicks Lake Management District. And that is created by a vote of the people saying, yes, I want to pay a little extra money in order to maintain the health of the water in the lake and the shoreline. And so when the district is formed, the citizens get together, and usually there's a small group of citizens that forms the district, and they determine how far out of a geographic center they want this assessment. Who's directly affected by the quality of that water. And so then they come up with the budget that they need to operate and figure out what each assessment, what each property is going to be assessed. And they go through some detail like who lives right on the water, who might live in a neighborhood that just has a community park that they use. Now they can either bill directly or they can contract with the county treasurer to make it part of the tax statement. And those are the assessments that you see on your tax statement. And generally, most special purpose districts will bill through the treasurer because it's much cheaper for them to have me add that line on and charge them a small administrative fee rather than them doing it themselves.
Huh, interesting. So how do special purpose districts impact property taxes? How does it all come together?
So the special purpose district assessments do not affect property taxes in any way, shape, or form.
Okay.
But they do get added, they generally are added onto the tax statement.
And so let's talk about Thurston County. You touched a little bit about lake management districts, but who are the special purpose districts in Thurston County and where are they?
So you've got 4 lake management districts: Long, Hicks, Lake Lawrence, and Black Lake. You've got the noxious weeds district. You've got the conservation district. There is like the Hicks or Hopkins Ditch Drainage District, the Chambers Ditch Drainage District. So they're scattered around the county, and it's basically wherever a group of citizens has come together and said, we need to have more money to maintain this thing. And generally, like government property is exempt from property taxes, but generally not exempt from assessments. So like the county-wide pays the noxious weed assessment. We pay the conservation assessments because our properties benefit from those monies.
Okay, that's good to know. I thought there were only, I know Black Lake is a special utility district, so they don't report to the county, but they report to the state of ecology. I guess it doesn't matter when it comes down to, getting the bill. It kind of just falls down on that self-imposed. And I did not know Hicks Lake was a lake management district, so it's good to know. I thought there was only Long Lake and Lawrence Lake. But let's talk about property value assessments for a second. Earlier this year, the assessor shared information that the median increase in property value has been 20% this year. And for some people that, are new homeowners like myself, or had just moved into the state, or, they are lived in a single income or a kind of a base income, it kind of drew alarms and very quickly. And I'm sure your office received several calls in regards to this. But, how do property values affect property taxes?
So there actually is not a direct correlation. And it's important to note that if your property value went up 20% this year, that doesn't necessarily mean your property taxes are going up that much. There's a limiting factor on the tax levies or the revenues for the taxing districts. So fire district, so let's go back to my earlier oversimplified example. So a fire district collected $500,000 this year. There's a 1% maximum, or the rate of inflation, whichever is lower, that limits the amount that they can increase their revenue next year. So that 1%, if you apply that to the $500,000, they could only collect an additional $5,000 next year on their regular levy. Now, one exception to that is if there has been any new construction within their boundaries, that is not subject to the 1% limit until the next year, because then it's become part of their budget. Your assessed value can change pretty dramatically, and that can be due to property condition, it can be due to the market forces, mostly due to the market forces. It can be due to, did you add, put a bedroom on the house this year? Did you make major improvements to the house this year? Or any building. And so there are factors that could cause your property tax to go up more than that 1%. Another major factor is that in most of the county, about 40 to 45% of your property taxes are voter approved, meaning that your neighbors, the majority of your neighbors approved a tax beyond the regular tax rate for that given district. And so that can also have an effect on your property tax if you, for instance, if the school district came and asked for a large capital improvement bond to build a couple of new schools, that can have a pretty significant impact on your property tax bill for next year that goes beyond that 1%.
That's very interesting. It kind of makes sense, I guess, in relation to the assessed value not being directly tied to your property taxes. If not, I feel like we would see kind of a wave pattern instead of a steady incline. And so are there any rules on the rate of increase for property taxes each year?
Not beyond the levy lid limit, but there is, so built into our system, the regular property tax is absolutely capped, limited at 1% of the total assessed value. So that's a hard stop. And then the junior taxing districts, there's primary tax districts and junior. And primary is like the cities, the county, the port. There's a list.
Okay.
The junior taxing districts, cumulative total of their levy is $5.90. However, you get into the voter approved segment again, and that changes the calculus a little bit.
And how does it change it?
So any taxing district can come to you as a voter and say, we would like an extra X amount of dollars. Are you willing to have that added to your property tax?
Okay, and then the voters will say either yes or no.
Right.
And that's what you get on your ballot, either for a special election, a primary election, or during the generals. Do they have to go for these kind of taxes? Do they have to go, or can they go anytime during those 3 periods when ballots go out?
I'm going to be completely honest. I don't know if certain entities are limited to certain elections, but like the schools can go on any of those. I know the counties and the cities can go on any of those, but there may be limitations for certain tax districts, and I don't know what they are.
So it's always important for people to check their ballots and
Yes.
make sure that they're checking what's in there and keep up to date with it. So thank you so much for answering those really technical questions in regards to property taxes and assessed values, and answering some questions that I've been seeing recently pop up that I really didn't have answers to. But let's switch to something a little bit funner. So what are you most hopeful for as we enter the next phase of the COVID-19 pandemic?
I'm hoping we kind of figure out how to live with this. I think it's with us forever. I'm a little bit of an amateur anthropologist, so I'm really excited to watch the next 10, 15 years how our culture changes because of this, because it has changed us. I never imagined in a million years that I would ever live through something this transformative. But I'm hoping we can figure out how to live with the disease in a way that maybe we don't have to do the masks, maybe we don't have to, restrict capacities in buildings and stuff.
Yeah, it hasn't been easy, so it'll be interesting what the next couple of years bring and how things shift. But taking it back to you and your position as a treasurer, you are an elected official, which is, you go, to Thurston County voters to vote for you. But what is your favorite part about being a treasurer since how long have you been an elected treasurer position, Jeff?
So I was appointed and elected in 2017, ran unopposed again in 2018. I'm going to run again next year. So since February of 2017, so about 4.5 years. And I worked for over 30 years in the assessor's office in various capacities. And so this kind of being the treasurer kind of completes my geek trip about property taxes. But it's really, truly fascinating to see how money flows, not just at the county level, but in the bigger picture between the banks and stuff. And then the investment side of it. It's just, for somebody like me who loves math and just loves picking apart how things work, it's just fascinating every day. And the best part about my job is my staff. I have got the best staff in the world.
Well, I keep hearing that from you, so I'm going to believe you. I hear it from other elected officials too and other department heads, so it's up in the air. I feel county staff are just really great in general, so we're just very lucky. But thank you again for joining me today and for answering such important questions in regards to property taxes. And for everyone watching, if you want to keep up with your local government, subscribe to the county's YouTube channel and All Board of County Commissioner meetings and work sessions are live and streamed there. Thank you.
Thank you.